Welcome to Crossing the Tape, your favorite true crime podcast.
My favorite.
Well, our favorite.
Yeah.
As always, I'm one of your hosts, Hillary, and I'm joined by my husband,
Brendan.
And today we will bring you the second part of our Lady in the Dunes series. So please sign the crime scene log and cross the tape with us.
So in our last episode, we talked about who Ruth Marie Terry was and her family life. For years after her body was discovered, her case remained cold and her actual identity remained unknown.
Which is terrible for a family. You know, they had no idea what happened to her.
And that the answer was there all this time.
Right.
They just couldn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a step back and look at the crime scene and where her body was found. In the summer of 1974, a young girl came across a body that was badly decomposed in Provincetown, Massachusetts.
And if you don't know Massachusetts very well, the little hook, the very tip of the little hook of the state itself is Provincetown. It's mostly surrounded by water.
They're right on the water. And that was July 26th. That particular area of Provincetown is known as the Race Point Dunes. The area has bike trails, some of which are a bit challenging. The terrain is also known for its insect activity, which is what contributed to the fast decomposition of Ruth's body. Her body was also surrounded by pine trees. If you know pine trees, get them off your car. They're acidic. They can damage the paint.
Pine needles, they're very acidic. If you see them near your tires, you're supposed to sweep them away because they can actually erode your tires. So just the fact that her body was found by the water, pretty much on the water, in kind of a rough terrain with pine needles, known for
lots of insects.
Right, and then it's July, and it's summer, and it's also humid.
Right. Heat, salt water, insects, acidic pine needles.
Yeah.
Very accelerated decomposition.
Yeah.
Compared to...
If it was winter.
More favorable.
Winter in a dry climate.
Right, conditions that might preserve a bit.
Right.
Also at the scene were two sets of footprints that led towards her body as well as tire tracks nearby. Investigators estimated she had passed away at least 2 weeks before she was found. The decedent was face down and partially on a blanket that seemed to be like a beach towel type blanket. Though her body was severely decomposed, law enforcement theorized that the victim, who they did not know was Ruth Marie Terry at the time, had either been sleeping when she died or she knew the killer. Now they deduced that based on the fact that it didn't look like there had been any signs of a struggle.
At first.
Right.
But again, she's badly decomposed.
Right, and it had been 2 weeks, so
right.
A lot of the sand would have been blown over and smoothed over if there were signs people had been thrashing around.
I know. I was amazed that there were still tire tracks and footprints.
Right.
That they decided were related.
Yeah, it must have been a very mellow summer.
Yeah.
Most likely, they couldn't tell if she had defensive wounds on her at that time either. Again, thanks to that decomposition. There were a few items of clothing around her as well, including a blue bandana and jeans. Both of those items were found underneath her head. It appeared she had reddish hair and her toenails were painted pink. The other significant indicator about who she may be was that she had extensive and expensive dental work done, mostly crown work. However, since it was so extensive, they determined the dental work probably cost several thousands of dollars, which in the 1970s, that's very
expensive.
Hey, today, if you tell me I need thousands in dental work,
it's a lot. But in the 70s, that's quite something.
So maybe this is somebody probably wealthy, well-to-do, highfalutin.
Right. Possibly.
Probably what they
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that time, they thought she could be anywhere from 20 years old to 49 years old, and that's a very wide breadth of victim.
Well, especially if, we don't know how many, and I should have looked it up, how many people were missing at that time. How many were there? If you could narrow it down to, well, we know she's 30, then you look at that file with those victims that are missing. But when the age range spans from, well, almost, 20 to almost 50, then you don't have a lot to narrow down.
Right. And of course, in hindsight, we know that she was from Tennessee, moved to California,
Right.
married to a guy from Nevada. Well, then she's found in Massachusetts.
Right.
Their initial sweep was probably who in
In
Provincetown or
Massachusetts, yeah.
greater Massachusetts,
Right. Is
maybe
missing.
surrounding states,
Right.
is missing. So it's unfortunate that they were unable to determine more for her loved ones. However, they had several leads. But remember, in the 1970s, they just didn't have the DNA technology we have today.
No. And they weren't even, DNA didn't really become something of significance for investigation until about the 80s.
Right.
So right now, I'm always fascinated when there's a case in the 70s and earlier, and they have the foresight to collect DNA.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, or at least collect items that could later be tested.
Right. I always think,
just go, well, there's nothing we can do with these.
Yeah, but they do anyway, and that's proven helpful later on.
Yes. The investigators did their best at the time for her and her family, though, of course, they didn't know it. The other notes that were significant was the way she most likely died. And though there did not appear to be defensive wounds, it did appear that foul play was involved. So again, initially, no signs of a struggle, but after a little more looking, since the decedent appeared to be a young, healthy woman, the area she was found in was somewhat rural and out of the way. An odd place for just, an average person out for a walk to just collapse and...
And that's why we kind of mentioned the description at the beginning of those dunes. That yes, there are bike trails. Yes, it's a place people go, but it is challenging.
Right.
It's not somewhere you're just going to meander along the beach.
Right. And the other indicator was, even though that decomposition was a factor, it looked like she may have been strangled and beaten.
So they probably got a better look, probably during the autopsy, when her remains were cleaned up a little bit.
Right, and they could see more damage probably to the skeleton rather than just on the surface. So they, of course, had strong suspicion that the young lady had been murdered. She was also sexually assaulted, and police suspected that the killer attempted to hide her identity because, though she had that extensive dental work, she also had missing teeth.
Yeah, and I did read some things that it looked like maybe the person had attempted to conceal her fingerprints with her hands, but also we have to remember this is outside in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So they couldn't really narrow that down as a motive or, a sign from the killer, just because we are talking about somewhere where there's animal activity.
Right, it's hard to tell how far the killer went and how much they were assisted by.
But the missing teeth is interesting.
Yes, right, especially since the dental work had been very extensive. The case grew cold, but investigators never gave up. And it should be noted the unknown woman had never been forgotten. In 2014, an investigator raised money to purchase a better casket for her remains because the original one had fallen apart.
Which I thought that was quite something.
Yes.
Like that's extremely kind.
This unknown Jane Doe.
Yeah, and at the time, then again, they still don't know it's the woman we know who it is, who her family said was a bright and positive person. The investigator just knows it's this woman we don't know.
It's and the lady of the dunes.
And she deserves better. Mm-hmm. I thought that was quite nice.
Yes. And a shame that the original casket didn't last that long.
I think it was metal and kind of rusted and eroded. Ocean.
By the sea.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure where she was buried, but, anywhere in Massachusetts.
Well, right, if they didn't know what better place to send her where she could be with family, she's probably going to be buried right around where she was found.
At least, and anywhere on the coast.
Mm-hmm. So that just goes to show that the investigators never intended to give up on finding who this young lady was and what happened to her. But before we talk about what to look forward to in the next episode, here is a word from the National Investigative Training Academy.
Interested in investigation and security? Whether you are already a professional or you are in the beginning stages, take all of your classes at the National Investigative Training Academy. Choose from over 200 courses, all written and taught by experts in the field. The National Investigative Training Academy, or NITA, has offered high-level investigative and security training for over 12 years. Like live classes, NITA has those too. Sign up today for private investigation and security courses and use brand ambassador code B as in boy, A as in Adam, 2367. Take a look at investigativeacademy.com. You'll find the link in our show notes.
In our next episode, we will discuss further details of the investigation that become major factors later on.
Yes.
And so with that, we thank you for joining us. Please sign the crime scene log on your way out.
Stay safe.
And so long.